What's up, Psychedelic and Cosmic Thoughts? It's Rolling Zaloon, and I just finished a piece. It doesn't really have a name, but I was thinking about it, and I thought 1,000 Thoughts a Second kind of accurately described it. And so I want to take you through what went into the making of it. I've been teaching myself Adobe Aftereffects as well, so I've just been throwing everything I've been learning into it and just crazy visuals. Why not? And then I went out to the desert with a few friends. I took some drone footage my friend got and threw that in there. I also have streamed Indo boarding or like balance boarding on Reddit, and so I threw that in there. I also found a story on my last video I did. I found a story on Reddit, a trip report, and I thought I'd find them so entertaining. So I found another one. This thing is crazy, this guy's story. And yeah, there'll be some music, and I hope you dig it. This post was submitted by Stranger Things to r/Trippy. Let's begin. The first time taking mushrooms was by far the most intense experience I've had in my life. About 12 years ago, I was preparing to leave for a tour with the Drum Corps Phantom Regiment the next day, and thought that eating some mushrooms at 10 p.m. the night before, seeing some colors for a little while, giggling, and then going to bed would do no harm to my ability to perform in front of 300 people that were scheduled the next morning. Anyways, I'm supposed to go pick up the half ounce of shrooms for my brother's buddy, but I got held up and I sent my friend Dan to go get them. We met up around 8 p.m. at my friend's house, divided up the shrooms into 2-gram portions and ate them. There were about 7 of us, and we planned to go to a local park that everyone goes to for their senior pictures. Right after we ingested the shrooms, my friend Austin told me that he had to use the restroom and to make sure we didn't leave without him. My mind is racing a bit just because I ate the mushrooms and I'm anxious to see what the big deal is. So naturally, after 2 minutes, I forgot Austin was in the restroom and we make it out to the park. I get a call 5 minutes later. It's Austin. We turned around to go get him and he's really mad, but gets over it. And then I remember looking at one of the street signs we were passing. It seemed like the letters in the signs were kind of visually echoing off the sides. I swore my friends were seeing the same thing I was. It was bizarre. But they said it took at least 45 minutes until we were supposed to feel anything. And I was just imagining it. I know what I saw. Anyways, we stopped at 7-Eleven on the way to the park, and of course run into a bunch of people I haven't seen in a while. I remember looking up at the light at the parking lot and thinking, damn! If I'm imagining this, I have a really good imagination. I could see the natural glow that surrounds the streetlights was way bigger and had way more colors. I giggled a bit and felt my stomach turn. I walked over to my buddies and explained that I was pretty sure we needed to go because something was starting to happen. Excitedly, we all jumped into the tiny car and continued on to the park. I remember feeling like there were vibrations in my legs. I was having intense muscle spasms. I could also feel my anxiety building, but I knew that the park was close and we'd be there soon. I was wearing some basketball shorts and a white shirt at the time. We got out of the car and started walking through the park. I remember it was so dark outside, but it didn't seem as dark as it usually was. I thought that was weird, and I figured my pupils were getting dilated and letting in more light, but I wasn't sure. Then I remember glancing down at my shirt and noticed the coolest looking design. something like a natural star on my shirt. Out of shock, I grabbed my shirt and noticed it was the creases in the shirt that looked like the design. I then turned to my buddy Dan and said, "I think they're working." We walked over to a bench and loaded a bowl. Keep in mind, this is no more than 20 to 25 minutes after ingesting. We begin to smoke and I realized that every time I take a hit, instead of tasting weed, I could hear it. When the smoke hit my tongue, I would hear a high-pitched ringing noise, and then I would see a few different shades of color. I remember hearing about synesthesia, and it was really blowing my mind. I told my friends what was happening, but they hadn't felt anything yet and didn't believe me. We're still sitting at the bench, loading a second bowl, when I get hit by a mosquito. All of a sudden, it feels like I'm being attacked by hundreds of mosquitoes. So I quickly get up from the bench and I start to walk towards the rest of the group, near the entrance of the woods. I'm smacking myself, trying to fend off the elusive mosquitoes. When I say to my buddy, "I'm starting to feel funny, man. Let's walk away from the crowd." Then I hear a car door close and I look over to the parking lot. Someone must have invited their friends because now there's a second group of people walking toward us, spinning and playing with glow sticks, and I'm thinking, what the fuck? Cops are definitely gonna get called. This is when things start to turn. I remember greeting an old friend, Megan, but something was different about my voice. It sounded like it was going through an amplifier that was positioned in front of a fan. It's kind of hard to explain, but my voice sounded electric. I was trying to explain this to people, but they started talking back. And I would yell, "Shut the fuck up," and immediately say, "Oh, sorry. What were you saying?" "Shut the fuck up. My bad. Continue. I wouldn't figure out why I couldn't have a conversation. So I said, "I think I need a minute," and walked over to a bench alone and put my head in my hands. In that moment, I had the strongest, most intense closed-eye visuals I've ever had. The best I can describe it is like the first Matrix, when they show the fields of human beings and the massive columns of eggs, and electricity shooting between them. It was just like that, but intense eggs. There were numbers of letters in various colors. I remember I was endlessly falling through these fields, and then my vision would shift sideways. I'd fall towards one of the letters or numbers and actually fall inside the number or letter. And then, once inside, it would just be another endless field of numbers and letters. This happened over and over. My friend Patrick walked over and put his hand on my shoulder and asked if I was feeling it. I opened my eyes, looked at him, and said, "You have no idea." This was when someone from the group yelled, "Cops!" I stood up and fucking bolted. I ran as fast as I could deep into the forest. And it had to be close to midnight. I remember running for what felt like 20 minutes until I came across some train tracks. I saw the tracks turned into this huge bridge that was probably 40 feet tall and crossed a big river. There were a lot of rocks at the bottom and I was standing there looking at everything, wondering if it was real or not. I then realized I had ran a little too far into the woods, so I would take the time to lay down for a few minutes and see what music was like. I put on Where's My Head At by Gene Allen, the Callous remix, and laid the phone on my chest. I remember barely being able to lift up my head. When I did, I realized I had to be fully peeking. The hills in front of me turned into massive 40-foot swells in the ocean. The entire face of the earth was covered in bright colored squares that were flashing lights, like the dance floor in Starksea and Hunch. I think that he said that right. I could feel my body moving up and down with the flow of the waves, and I started fucking screaming. I dug my fingers into the ground in an attempt to hold onto the earth so that I wouldn't fall off and yell, "Someone help, I didn't think it was gonna be like this." I literally thought I was going to drown in the grass. There was a cell phone tower somewhere in the distance, with a red light at the top of it. The light had extrapolated itself all the way across the sky into a perfect grid. So I saw the dance floor look in waves, about 200 LED little red dots perfectly spaced horizontally and vertically across the sky. And the moon was just bouncing across the horizon as if somebody had dropped the ball. It was bouncing. I was really feeling it. For a moment, I listened to the music, "Don't Let the Walls Cave In on You," and I cracked a smile. I remembered that it was me experiencing all of this for some reason. This had gotten so intense that I forgot I was even me, if that makes sense. I remember screaming so loud that I started to hear my name being called out, and I stood up and saw my friend Dan. Then I heard someone else behind me yell my name. It was also Dan. And then someone poked their head out from the trees to the left. It was also Dan. Before I knew it, I was yet again in the Matrix, surrounded by like 100 Dans. And then all of a sudden, they conjoined into one Dan. And he grabbed me and said, "Dude, there's undercover cops out here. We gotta go." All of a sudden, I felt like I couldn't trust anyone. We saw a flashlight coming from the end of the tracks, and so we started to run. We had to cross the railroad bridge, which to this day was the scariest thing I've done, and probably the most dangerous too. As I took my time stepping from railroad tie to railroad tie, everything beneath me was shaking. My feet looked twice as big as the railroad ties. Kept moving back and forth, but I kept reassuring myself just one more step. I'm surprised he didn't have a Stand By Me reference pop out of the woods, something along those lines. Anyways, I finally made it across the bridge. I lost consciousness at this point, and I'm not sure for how long. When I came to, everything was so quiet. My entire being had been entirely reduced to a single speck of light. I was simply observing. I noticed that my mind had no chatter either, only emotions. And then I saw my friend Brayden, who I knew took the mushrooms with us, but not once did I see him until this point. He also was stuck in the thorn bush. I thought this was hilarious, and I think for the first time during the whole trip I laughed. When he said something to me, but I didn't understand what language he was speaking. It was some language I'd never heard before, and I realized at this point, I didn't know what to say back. I forgot how to speak, and not only did I forget how to speak, I forgot the entire English language. All the words seemed to run together, and I couldn't describe anything that was being said to me. I forgot I was even a human being. I was a speck of light clinging on to any object that felt comforting. We retreated back into my friend's car right as it started to rain. It was probably like 3 or 4 a.m. by then, and I remember it being so hot in the car. My friend Dan stuck his face against the window and said, "Do it, it feels great." Before I knew it, everyone was sticking their faces against the windows, and I thought we looked like lizards, and we laughed for like a solid 45 minutes straight. Really good times. We decided, for whatever reason, to go to Whataburger while we were coming down. At this point, I was tripping harder than any other trip I've ever done. But nothing compared to the peak of this particular trip. So being in public didn't bother me too bad. In fact, I had a little confidence because I had just survived non-existence. Our waiter walked over to our table, and I remember he had the biggest nose I've ever seen, and I have a rather large nose. But this thing was huge. He then barked at us like a chicken, slowly turned and walked away. He had to have known we were tripping and wanted to fuck with us, but it affected my friend Dan differently. He looked so confused and disturbed, and I started to laugh, but then quickly got serious. His face went totally white. I told him he didn't look so hot, and then he fucking passed out. Lights out, face down on the Whataburger table. I shook him to wake back up. Everyone in the restaurant was looking at us, and I finally got him conscious again, and we left. I think I sat in my car for the next few hours while I slowly reflected on what had happened. And then I remembered I was supposed to leave with the drum line to go on tour in a few hours. I drove carefully back to the UNT and met up with the drum line. We set up the drums, and the crowd started to form around us. I had 0 hours of sleep at this point and was just really starting to get a grasp on reality. And I remembered the English language again. That helped. I remember Paul looked around at all the drums and asked if we were ready. He starts to click his sticks together and whoom! The trip comes back. His sticks start to vibrate back and forth, and he walks up to the center snare, and I see about 50 Pauls walking up to the snare line. I close my eyes and start to play. I'm hanging in there playing somewhat clean until the quad break comes up, and I start to feel like I'm tripping really hard again. I see all the heads in the crowd turn my way, and I don't like that. I panic, I stop playing, and then, for whatever reason, hit the loudest rim shot on the Spock in the world, right in the middle of the solo. Everyone in the crowd, in unison, goes, ew. I felt my stomach drop. The cameras turn away from me, and I start squeezing the shit out of my strings, trying to play so hard. I won't get deep into this part of the story, but in the woods, at like 2 a.m., I ran into an old acquaintance from elementary school, whose mom had died. I remember there was a terrific energy about him, and I repeatedly asked him if he was shrooming. He wasn't, but what a nice guy. He babysat us for the next 45 minutes in the woods, and at like 2 in the morning, until 2 in the morning, I could find my way back to the entrance. I still, to this day, think that there was a guardian angel, that he was a guardian angel, because I was losing my mind and he helped me get back to reality. He was so encouraging and heartwarming, and I remember being amazed at how nice he was, despite losing his mom to cancer. I learned a lot from that single interaction, somewhere between being a speck of light stuck in a thorn bush and clinging onto this dude's random arm and being escorted through the woods. I ran back into my friend Dan and Robbie. I was so happy to finally see them, and it felt like it had been an eternity. In all seriousness, I turned to Dan and said, "What is the date today? How long have we been out here?" I totally forgot that we'd be performing in front of 300 people in about 8 hours. They told me that it had been about 4 to 5, and my jaw dropped. I would have bet all my money that we were out there for at least 2 weeks. The loss of sense of time really confused me. At this point, my brain was done, and I had seen too much. I felt fried. Luckily, I made it through that and go to talk to my buddy that traveled to watch us perform, and I explained to him that we were tripping the entire time. If I'm being honest, taking those shrooms at that point in my life was probably the worst possible decision I could have made, and the stress from messing up in the crowd while tripping just piled up, and I went into a bit of a depression. Luckily, I've come out of the depression, but it was definitely one of the craziest nights I've experienced. realized I've got another little section to fill, and I've got enough time to share another trip report that I found. This one, same thing, submitted to r/trip reports and was uploaded by Advocate 2020. It begins. When I was 18, so like 15 years ago, I was at a gas station buying cigarettes for a friend who were underage on like an eighth of shrooms. They had not told me in advance that I was responsible for buying the cigarettes. I thought I was going for an awesome hyperspace car ride. So I go into the store with no shoes, eyes like saucers, visibly nervous, and I walk up to the counter. I summon all my courage and confidently tell the clerk, 1 pack of cigarettes, please. And the guy's like, do you have a brand in mind? The tension rose. So I'm gasping at straws for cigarette brands, and finally I land on Camel Reds. He looks me up and down seriously and cards me. Everything is in order, and he tells me the price. Quote, that'll be $5.85. And it was at that moment I realized I'm carrying all $1 bills, and I no longer remember how to count. So basically I'm fucked. I'm just going to prison. My family's going to disown me, and I'm definitely going to hell. And then it hits me like a lightning bolt. Perhaps the most brilliant idea I've ever had. It doesn't matter if I don't know how to count, because the clerk does know how to count. And I can use his sober brain instead of my trippier brain to do the counting if I simply put bills on the counter at the same time as I watch his eyes. When he knows it's enough, he'll register it on his face, and I'll know when to stop putting down bills. Pretty great, right? I effectively outsource pattern recognition to the clerk. Einstein would be very proud. Just one problem. The clerk is not looking at the counter, and he's looking at me right in the eyes. So essentially, I made it rain on this guy's counter, making full eye contact for like 11 bills before he puts his hand on my wrist and goes, dude, are you okay? This was the closest I've ever come to having a bad trip. So stressful. It gets worse from there, but eventually I go out of the gas station shook, physically intact, and somehow it was a close call. Lol. Alright. Enjoy some of the crazy dancing coming up.
I click clack, where you and your men's at? Where them gangsters? Where them dimes at? Dimes at, dimes at, dimes at. You know I click clack, where you and your men's at?
And that'll just about wrap her up. I had an absolute blast making this piece. I hope you guys enjoyed. I didn't realize how long this was going to be until I'm looking at the editing. But I had a good time. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm always looking for suggestions. If you have your own trip reports, give me some of that sweet, sweet love and comment it, like it, subscribe, show your friends, all the good stuff. Have a great day, and I'll catch you on the flip side.